One of my favorite book series are the Foundation novels by Isaac Asimov. It surrounds a strange theme called psychohistory, which is known as a mathematical model for predicting the future. But a few unknown outside variables almost upended this mathematical model, and eventually a very powerful force almost took over the entire galaxy through pure thought and manipulation. Making the long story short, the mathematical model did actually prevail in the end, and this singular power was eventually abolished. Now, I don't think this story is really that far off from reality, and instead of a mathematical model, it might be more based on our intention as a species that will dictate our long-term future. Now, technological achievements, just like the singular power in the science fiction series, may seem to change the long-term outlook of humanity. But humans are quite resilient, and I think the long-term future will not be dictated from a singular entity or power, but it's going to come from every conscious mind who decides what is ultimately right for our society. Anyways, I do think it's important to understand emerging technologies, ones that may seem a little bit crazy because they can have a pretty big impact on our current lives. Will these technologies stay around like the wheel, or fade away like the steam engine? Well, I will let you predict the fate of these technologies, but anyways, let's begin this weird countdown. At number 7, machines that can physically touch. The field of robotics is progressing rapidly. Simulations and machine learning have allowed robots to move like humans, and their sensory perception is drastically improving. Now, it's a pretty huge undertaking to actually mimic human skin, because it does have around 5 million receptors. However, several projects are starting to dive into the realm of robotic touch. One example of this is the H1 robot, which consists of individual microprocessors integrated with sensors. These sensors can detect contact, acceleration, proximity, and even temperature. And the team also used an event-based system which reduces processing. It's kind of like where you touch water, but if you remain in contact with water, you eventually get used to the sensation and you're not as responsive to the environmental change. Another project actually combines sensory perception with locomotion, and basically it combines an integrated strain sensor, temperature sensor, and even an actuator. So this allows simultaneous reflex with locomotive capabilities. So basically this allows the robot to pick up something that's really pliable and it wouldn't destroy it. So in the future, machines are going to be supercharged with machine learning algorithms, and they might actually even understand what they're picking up. And I think that's really exciting because we're really not that far off from that kind of robotic level. At number 6, a virtual partner. We are starting to see some weird concepts emerge from the VR world. Avatars, chatbots, and even fake waifus perpetrated by other people, yes, I'm looking at you VR chat, are leading to new types of interactions that are actually pretty neat and even a little bit fun. And if we take this one step further, it will eventually lead to a virtual interactive AI character. And unlike expensive robotic platforms, this type of virtual assistant software can be open sourced and developed by a lot of different people. Now, it's definitely not going to be perfect at first, and it's going to take a huge collaborative effort to make a VR character more lifelike and responsive to human interaction. Potentially, this is $1 billion market, and some companies have just touched the surface of this idea. Theoretically, this type of character can transfer between smart devices, including your phone, TV, or even holographic display. And it may even lead to virtual psychologists or even mastermind mechanics who can help you fix things. Although I'd be a little bit intimidated by an anime character telling me how to change a spark plug. At number 5, BioHybrid Robots. There's a new weird type of robot emerging. They're basically a fusion between living organisms and robotics. One example of this stems from the University of Tokyo, and they have fused muscle tissue to synthetic components. Once a voltage is applied, the organic part of the robot moves, and although this may seem trivial, this type of fusion can form very complex machines. Another example of engineered lifeforms are xenobots. They are basically stem cells that are arranged in a pattern designed by software. They can literally last for days and move to designated locations. And obviously this could lead to future drug delivery systems. It's also really neat because it is the closest thing to a nanobot, which has a self-repairing mechanism. Now, it's really hard to map out the potential of a biohybrid nanobot, but for some reason I keep thinking of the nanomachine son meme. At number 4, Programmable Matter. This may seem a little bit far-fetched, and this overlaps the BioHybrid Robots subject a little bit. This type of technology utilizes building blocks which can transform itself. So for example, these building blocks might be able to manifest into a chair and then change into a sofa. The problem is that this is a very complex type of technology, and you'd have to decide what these building blocks are made out of. I personally think that this can be scaled with robotics, along with swarm capabilities, and this type of swarm would be able to utilize a central cloud computing system which collects data and sends signals back to the swarm. Energy transference can also be done with an RF transmission. For now, researchers are playing around with larger swarm robotics which can form basic configurations, and there are also drone setups which work in swarms. So we are getting pretty close to the micro level, and it's only going to be a matter of time until we have robots which are small enough to form complex shapes which are indistinguishable from inanimate objects. We get to number 3, and it's actually a pretty phenomenal technology, and it's a bidirectional BCI. Theoretically, a bidirectional brain implant would allow you to fully immerse in VR, control robots, avatars, and even exchange massive amounts of information telepathically. And full exploitation of this technology would mean that you can utilize 5 senses in VR. It's hard to say how long that's going to take to develop, because we're talking about Matrix level stuff here. So you would probably need a fully adaptive model of the brain, maybe linked to a quantum algorithm, integrated with a device which can constantly communicate with billions of neurons. So we are going to need breakthroughs in quantum computing and even magnetic neuron control. Now, this is not a completely crazy idea, because we do know how to do this with electrodes. And we have seen this with the Gomez case, where a completely blind patient was given vision because of a bidirectional BCI implant, which decodes electrical signals sent from a video camera and directly linking it to neurons. So we know that we can put information into the brain, but the question is how much information can we feed into the brain, and can we actually stimulate all 5 senses? Now we get to number 2, and just a warning, this might tick off some people because physics is a really defended topic, but anyways, it's anti-gravity propulsion. One way or another, we will eventually figure out how to statically counter the effects of gravity. There are tons of theories which state how this effect works, but the majority of the scientific community still embraces the theory of relativity. This theory predicts that objects with a mass bend space-time, so objects with more mass have more gravity. The problem with this theory is that it does not explain what is happening with the universe, since its expansion has been accelerating and not slowing down like it should be according to this model. A bunch of other theories have followed suit, including the theoretical emergence of dark energy, which would make up 68% of the universe, and dark matter, which would have its share at 27%. And some scientists have even tried to advance the model further with gravitons and other weird effects. But ultimately, we do not know what any of this stuff is, and many skeptics question if it even exists at all. This has led into other alternative theories, including the electric universe theory, which attributes electromagnetics and ether as the influence to what's happening in the universe. Anyways, I think the ultimate answer is going to come down to experimentation, and this will eventually reveal what theory is the most accurate. Now, this is also a tricky thing because you have to get a lot of variables right in experimenting, and just because nothing happens does not mean the entire theory is discredited. So there are 2 ways to look at this. If you embrace general relativity, then we're going to have to wait a very long time because you're going to have to bend space-time in order to have a spacecraft that can actually take off from Earth and go faster than the speed of light. And then obviously you have electrogravitics, which has an effect on mass. And we have already seen experiments like the Thomas Brown effect and the Potnikov experiment where they have already claimed that they made anti-gravity effects. Or it's something completely different. Maybe it's a combination of these 2 models, or maybe it can be explained by an outlier model such as quantized inertia. Ultimately, I do think that we are getting closer to the answer, and the truth will be eventually revealed in the very near future. Now we are going to go really deep into the rabbit hole and look at number 1, Femtotechnology. This is the holy grail of matter manipulation, and femtotechnology may be able to change the structure and chemical properties of individual atoms. We are talking really small here, 10 to the power of negative 15 meters, and just for comparison, nano is 10 to the power of negative 9 meters. So theoretically, this would be able to change the energy states of electrons and atoms. This could even lead to self-replicating machines which are comprised of nucleons. Frank Drake, a famous astrophysicist, speculated the possibility that self-replicating organisms composed of nuclear molecules may live on the surface of neutron stars, but they would be very short-lived. So an artificial femto machine may only last for a fraction of a second. But we are talking about machines which can build things beyond the atomic level, so it's pretty crazy. Now ultimately, we do not know the potential of femtotechnology, but it is a really cool concept to think about. So once again, thanks for watching. Please like the video if you enjoyed it, and also make sure to subscribe to my channel.